Hey everyone, welcome to Build at Home. I'm Ricky Camilleri. I'm joined today by one of my favorite actresses, Rebecca Hall. It's so good to see you again, Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining me.
As always, thank you for joining me
Um,
at home.
of course, and Rebecca's going to be talking to us about Tales from the Loop, her new show on Amazon, as well as a movie that she directed. But before we get started, I just want to say, as I have been at the top of all of these interviews, that due to school closures because of the coronavirus, over 300 million children have missed school lunches. And if you are interested in donating and finding out a way that you can help these children, please go to nokidhungry.org. So on that note, Rebecca, good to see you. Thanks for stopping by, so to speak.
So it was a real arduous trek from my kitchen into my office and to sit down in front of my computer. So
I'm sure it sounds really difficult. Everest style. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So before we even talk about Tales from the Loop and things that you're working on, how are you passing the time right now? How is your quarantine going? Your isolation?
You know what? It's all right. It's all right. I'm secretly quite a homebody, so I'm, quietly quite not hating it. I'm here. My loved ones are here. My family's here. I'm hanging out with my 2-year-old. We live in a house with a garden, so we're really lucky, and we get to sit outside. And I'm keeping busy reading books and painting, and also remotely editing the film that I'm working on. So I'm staying pretty busy.
Yeah, I don't think I knew I was a secret homebody until the last 2 weeks, where I've been kind of like, I just get to listen to records all day and read books and watch movies. This is kind of sick.
It's not terrible. I mean, obviously, I'd rather it not be happening, but there is that. I don't know.
Of course.
There's a nice focusing that comes with having to just be quiet for a minute.
Right. No one's judging me for not going out tonight. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. People judge you for not going out. I never go out. I never see anyone.
I admire you. I admire that 100%. So tell me about Tales from the Loop, this new show on Amazon. I watched the first episode. It is kind of a mind scramble what's happening. It seems as though I don't want to give anything away because it hasn't come out yet. But it's Jonathan Pryce, it's Paul Schneider, the great Paul Schneider. How did you get involved with this show?
Well, somebody, I got asked, and I was very taken with the premise of it. I don't mean the narrative premise. I mean the fact that it was based on, it arrived in my inbox, as it were, as an offer saying this is a limited for Amazon that is inspired by artworks, which I thought was very compelling and rare. I mean, I'm a real believer that everything is inspired by something, but it was nice to see that this was coming from a place of a very strong visual aesthetic, which I felt signaled that it would have a very strong style and tone, and be unique and have that sort of authorship to it, which I find intriguing and something I care about, honestly. So I was sort of taken with that. And then when I read the script,
were the artworks presented with the scripts that it was inspired by?
Yeah, they sent me a link to the art, so I was able to look at it before I read the script.
Oh, that's awesome. Did that open up the script for you a little bit more, or does it? Yeah.
Well, there's a like when you look at something that's, you can see why it was born out of these pictures, because they really do sort of trigger your imagination, I think, because they're quite mysterious. They sort of very spare, cold, icy landscapes with sort of like a random dysfunctional looking box just hovering in a corner. And I spent quite a lot of time going, what's going on here? And that's clearly what happened to Nathaniel, to the point that he decided to imagine an entire world based on that feeling. So, and I think that the feeling that looking at those pictures gives you did definitely influence the whole style of the piece, down to the obvious things like the art direction and the costumes and all of that, but also the sort of acting style, I think, is similarly spare, and the language and the dialogue is indirect and subtle and quite enigmatic.
So you see these pictures, which in its way are sort of hallucinatory yet spare at the same time, and that can actually affect the way that you approach the tone of your performance.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I think
Like,
just acting's weird. You know, I don't really know how, but I think there's a particular strange sort of alchemy that happens that's to do with a feeling, and then it's when you read something, and then for me anyway, a lot of acting is about finding a way into recreating that feeling, or like producing that feeling in the people that watch it. So yeah, absolutely. Did I just lose you?
No, I'm here. Can you see me?
I lost you for a minute. It's fine, you're back. My computer just died briefly.
When it comes to recreating that feeling, oftentimes actors talk about when they get on set trying not to recreate feelings of any kind, at least when they're in the midst of a take, because that can kind of like limit the performance. How do you sort of ingest all of this material, and then when you get to do the scene, say you're doing the scene with the little girl in the first episode, how do you kind of throw that stuff away or hope that it comes out?
It's really, that's a good question. I think it's like you know, you absorb something and just hope that and, you know, I use the word alchemy for a reason. I think that you absorb something and then something comes out of you that's different. So I don't think you can control it too much. And in fact, I think the more that you control it, the more that dangerous and kind of wrong it starts to be.
Can I ask, as having just directed your first film, does directing give you a better or at least different perspective on all of those things that you kind of can't control when you're just acting?
Yes.
End of story.
Yeah, well, directing is like the ultimate. Film directing certainly is like the ultimate act of control. I mean, I grew up. My father was the theatre director, and I grew up watching him work and thinking about what it would be like to be a theatre director, and it never appealed to me. And I think totally egomaniacally, I think partially because you do all this work as a theatre director, then you've got to sit in a dark room with everyone else and just watch them do it, and you have no control over whether it will go well or not. And that just looked like a nightmare. And film directing is brutal. You know, you do all this. You know, there's the creative process of writing, then there's the creative process of shooting the movie, and then there's a whole other creative process, which is the edit, which is like making it all over again. And it is, and you do control it, a lot of it, but there's also so much of it that you can't control because independent filmmaking is a nightmare, and nobody.
It's also, it becomes nonstop. Like what you control is sort of like what you control out of the compromise, or your control is the constant compromise, right? Like when you're on set, it's like, oh, this thing is happening, and so that thing that you initially thought of can't exactly get done.
The whole thing's a compromise. You know, there's the thing in your head, and there's the thing that you actually make, and then there's the thing that it actually is that reveals itself to you, and you have to like be wise and open enough to let it be the thing that it's going to be, like the thing that it has to be. Like it can't possibly be the thing that you imagine because, you know, it was cloudy that day, or it was you know, X, Y, and Z, or you only had 5 minutes to shoot the scene, or you couldn't get coverage because there was a great tank in the back, or whatever. I mean, it's like there's so many unknowns. But it's a really fascinating process, like letting go of that and letting a thing emerge into the thing that it's going to be.
What is your movie, if you don't mind me asking?
No, I don't mind you asking. It is a film. It's called Passing. It's based on a novella that was written in 1929 by a woman called Nella Larsen, who was a biracial African-American woman, and she wrote this story about two women who are light-skinned enough to cross the color line in 1929 Harlem, and one who has chosen to entirely immerse and has married a white man who doesn't know that she's black, and the other one who is not and lives as a black woman in Harlem. And they went to high school together and had a friendship of sorts. And at the beginning of the story, they bump into each other again. And the film sort of progresses from there.
And you're close to done editing it right now, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna like picture lock in, hopefully a couple of weeks. I mean, depending on how doing it remotely works, slows everything down. But yeah.
Now, I have to ask, like, coming off of directing your first movie, are you excited to direct your next movie, or are you like, you're like, okay, I guess I did it. Great.
In 6 months. I'm not ready to answer that question yet. Yeah, I don't know. It's been a really kind of important process for me. I mean, it's a weirdly personal story for me, despite being totally impersonal and set in 1929. It feels to me like directing film is for the first time harnessing a lot of the things I'm interested in my life. Like, I've always painted, I've always drawn pictures, I've always been interested in, visuals in that respect. I've always been, my mother's a musician. I've grown up with music. I've always been interested in music. I play instruments. I've always written things, not necessarily shown them to anyone, but I've always been a writer, so it's not, I've just been sort of like, I've been doing the acting thing forever, but it's not really how I define myself entirely. So it's sort of funny. This is the first time that I feel that this is a career path that holds all of those interests and passions and blends them into a thing, into an end result. So I hope that it goes well, because I have loved doing it. It feels like the thing that I want to do. So, we'll see.
I feel like sort of side note, but you made me think of this. You can't really define yourself as an actor and live healthily. You have to have these other things that define you, right?
Oh yeah, I really do believe that. But acting's kind of, it's not like other art forms where you can I can go up to my room upstairs and paint a picture by myself and not interact with anyone else, and it feels like a totally sort of singular expression of something. And acting is, it takes all these other components, and it's also about life. So if you don't engage with the business of living life, then you sure as hell aren't going to be very good at acting.
Are you the type of person, the type of actor who's also just sort of like a natural performer? Like, I know some actors who it's like, get them on set, get them on stage, get them to rehearsal, and they act. But then there are some actors who are just sort of like, give them a prompt and they're just ready to perform. Yeah, and sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. It
depends on the context. Yeah, no, I'm not really one of those. I've always been a bit more of a, I guess my sort of latent personality is one of observer rather than necessarily. Yeah.
Right. Get you to the set, get you to the stage, and that's when you start doing the job.
Yeah, I've always been pretty shy, honestly. It's like acting is a way of escaping that. So.
Yeah, I think of we've talked about this movie a bunch of times, because I think, for my money, it's one of the great performances of the last 10 years, if not more, which is your performance in Christine, which is such a radically different performance than what you're doing in Tales from the Loop. What is that like to sort of straddle those two different worlds? I mean, Christine is like a very physical, gangly, crazy sort of performance, and Tales from the Loop is incredibly stoic and reserved.
Yeah, you're right. It's true. What is it like? I don't know. I just feel that my process as an actor doesn't change. Like, the circumstances change, the characters change, but my approach is the same. Like, the ways in which I achieve it might also change, actually, but the sort of kernel of it is make the person that you're playing credible and tell the story well. Like, that's it. And you do what you have to do in order to do that. So whatever the character is, you find what the character is, and then you find your way into it.
Is it more or less tiring or exhausting as an actor to be emoting in such a raw, strong, sort of outward way like Christine, or to sort of be withholding and having to kind of be a version of yourself that isn't outward the way that your character in Tales from the Loop is?
I think there are pros and cons to both. Like, it can be really rewarding and cathartic on some level to play someone whose emotions are very external and who says what they feel. There can be a sort of strength in that. Like, you're active and you're front-footed, and you're sort of you're owning whatever that space is. And there can be a lot of pain in playing someone who doesn't ever say what they feel, because you're still having to feel all that, and then you're having to bury it, and at a certain point you're walking around with all those emotions still in your body. I don't know, like, for me, I've always been interested in what I think of as a character's mask, because I think we all have them. I think every human being has the person that they are privately, and the person that they want to be, or they perform the version of themselves that they perform, and the struggle of that and the conflict of that sometimes. And I'm always drawn to characters that have that tension, I think. But I think they all do. I think Christine does, and I think Greta does. So, that's the commonality for me between most characters, is finding what their mask is versus what their inner life is. And every character has that.
Is the mask something you look for because that's a tangible thing that you can perform?
Yeah, I think that, I often think about, with Christine, there was a double layer to this, because when I was doing Christine, I was thinking an awful lot about her fixation with how people were seeing her. So the sort of external, the thing to play in a lot of the scenes was, whoever I was acting with was like, how are you seeing me right now? Are you seeing me how I want to be seen, or do I need to work better at doing something else so that you can see me a different way? And that was so that was her mask, and her mask was like this kind of mess, shifting kind of, and it was also sort of self-reflecting and looking at herself all the time. Whereas other people, the mask is subtler, or it's less concerned with how it's being taken, and more concerned with just hiding something that they are trying to be strong about, or they don't want to share, or but I think that's always my sort of approach on some level.
Right. With most people, it doesn't take them out of the moment nearly as much as someone like Christine, who's totally focused on herself.
Yeah, exactly.
I really love Tales from the Loop. I always love talking to you, Rebecca, and congratulations on passing. Please come back. Hopefully we'll be able to do it in studio when passing comes out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, here's hoping.
And if not, we'll do it this way again.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Stay sane, stay healthy, stay home.
Thank you. You too. Stay healthy. Stay safe. Bye, Rebecca. Thanks so much.
Bye. Nice talking to you. See you later.
Nice talking to you.